All right. Hi, software. Welcome to your code along for working with Sine. I know that this seems kind of like an overwhelming concept. I swear it's going to be really cool and useful. I'm really excited for you guys to see how this works in a program. I just want to name a few things before we get started. First, as you guys know in code along videos, please always pause so that you can recreate things on your screen as we are walking through them on mine. You know that I'm going to work at my normal speed, so pause, rewatch whenever you feel necessary. Second, the thing we are working in right now is also the place where you're going to be doing your challenges for the day. So I am going to be just focused on like stuff above line 18 right now. You can see where it says code along, you can see where it says challenges up bottom. The thing that I'm worried about is this little circle in the upper left-hand corner. Everything else, that's there for you. So we're going to do our best to ignore it. The reason why this is all in one document as opposed to how we normally do things in class is because I know you guys are already doing a lot of bouncing between tabs and between different things. I don't want to further complicate this by making you have to go between a video and like your code along and something else, especially because Sine involves a little bit of setup, and hopefully we're going to do that setup together right now. So I'm going to actually show you two different ways to set things up, and I'm going to put links to both of them in Classroom, so you'll have those, and I think it'll be really great. So we are also going to do a little bit of, I believe, console logging. I think that's going to be easier than displaying the text on the screen. Please don't feel like you need to console log everything that I do. I just want you to be able to see it and have awareness of numbers. If you feel like seeing it and having awareness of the numbers is useful for you in your program, by all means, go right ahead and do that. So the first thing that I'm going to do is make myself a little bit bigger in your corner. There we go. Perfect. I have this circle, the one in the left corner, and my goal for this circle is I want it to bounce up and down. I want it to make that oscillating motion using sine, but specifically just upwards and downwards. That's it. That's my goal. So in order to do this, I need to be able to take the sine of an angle, and that means eventually I'm going to need an angle. So first, I'm just going to test what sine does for me. And I'm going to do this with a console log inside setup because that's something that we're used to. So when we want to use sine in P5, we use the function Sin, which I realize looks like sin. It is pronounced sine. You will see this on your graphing calculator as well as in P5 in most programming languages. And almost always what this function does is it takes in a number, any numeric value you want to give it. I'm going to start with 45, and it returns that sine ratio. So the math behind this is sine is assuming the number you give it is actually the angle in a right triangle. And it's saying if this was the angle, this would be the ratio of that opposite side and that hypotenuse. Again, if that math doesn't matter to you now, it's okay. We're still going to learn how to use these numbers. When I hit play right now on sine of 45, we see that I end up with 0.85 blah, 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 very long decimal. And I can try changing to a few different numbers. I can put in 450 if I want. I get a different decimal that is now negative. I can try putting in 20. I get 0.91 something something. I can try putting in 200. I get negative 0.87. I can try putting in any numbers. And if you want to pause right now and play, go ahead. What you will notice is that these numbers never go below -1. And they never go above 1. What I want to do if my motion is to bounce is I want to be able to go between all of these values, meaning I can't have just one number plugged in here. I need to create an angle that changes, and I need to find a way to plug that angle into my sine function. So to do that, I am first going to make a variable for my angle. I'm going to call it var angle up top. And in setup, I'm going to have angle just start at 0. Now, a changing angle value is something that you are going to need for every sine function you do, or sorry, every trigonometric function you do. So sine, and tomorrow we will see cosine. This is going to be a part of it every time you want to use it. So in your final project, when you are asked to use sine and cosine, this is something you'll want to remember as something you need for your setup. Now, I also need that angle to change. So in my draw function, because I know my draw function runs forever, I am going to put in angle plus, oops, you guys don't know that yet. Angle equals angle plus, we're going to do really small numbers for this one, and we can see how changing those numbers affects it. So I'm going to just add a 10th, 0.10. You can mess with the numbers on your own once it starts going. And just for the record, because I'm sure you're going to see me doing this, if I don't want to write all of this out, I can also just say angle plus equals 0.10. It does the same thing. It takes whatever was in angle, it adds 0.10, it adds it back to angle and resaves, does exactly what I want. And that's what I was going to show you before and then realized I hadn't taught you yet. Okay, so now I have a changing angle, and in draw, I'm going to add a console log, which please do not feel like you need to add. I just want to get these numbers printed. I'm going to write that the angle is, comma, whatever the angle is. I'm going to hit play, and I now see this number going up by kind of like leaps and bounds, but increasing consistently. If I want to take the sine of that number, I need to make another variable that is always going to be working off of a new angle. And I'm going to call that the sine. And inside of draw, I'm going to say that the sine is equal to the sine of my angle. And I am then going to try printing that out. So I'm going to say the angle is angle, the sine, oops, let me print text first so it's easier to read. The sine is the sine. I'm going to hit play, and now we see I have a changing angle and I have a changing sine, and I know it's going by very, very quickly, probably even more so because you're watching the video. It is not important that I know exactly which sine value, which sine ratio matches with which angle number. It's important that I know they're both changing, because now that they're both changing, the angle is going up consistently, the sine is still going between -1 and 1, it's making that bouncing effect I want. I could try and use the sine variable in my circle. So I'm actually going to comment out that console log because it was really annoying me. I don't want to keep looking at it. And in my ellipse underneath code along, I'm going to get rid of that 50 in the Y position, and I'm going to replace it with the sine to see what it does. So when I hit play now, I see that I have this circle at the top, and it's kind of hard to tell, but it is moving. It's jumped really high on my screen, and it is moving, but it's only moving a little tiny bit. And if we think about this, this actually makes a lot of sense. Our circle jumped up because those sine values are very, very small. They're between -1 and 1. That's the very top part of my y-axis. And they're not changing a lot. That's why I don't see like a huge jump here. So this is the first way that we can learn to work with sine. And it's a way that I think is going to be very accessible to a lot of students. It is not the way that I find to be the easiest to access or the most organized, but it is method 1. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write in method 1. We're going to comment this out so that we can see it in a second. I have my circle, and if I want to make this sine number bigger, if I want to magnify it, a first instinct might be to use a little math, and I could multiply whatever my sine value is by a bigger number. So maybe I start by multiplying it by 20. I hit play. Now I see this circle bouncing up and down. It's going off my canvas at the top, but it's still bouncing up and down at like a bigger range. And this is where I would encourage you to pause and play with this number you're multiplying by. What if instead of 20, I said 100? What if instead of 100, I said 75 or 200 or 500? What values could you possibly get out of this? This is also a great time, since you are pausing and playing, to try adjusting this angle number. Try making it smaller, meaning smaller decimal values. Try making it bigger, just so that you can see what happens. And once you feel confident and you're done playing, come back here and we will continue going over some other tweaks for method 1. So something you might notice is right now this is going all the way up to the top. Maybe I don't want it to bounce all the way up to the top. I could fix that by adding values on. This will follow the order of operations. So if I add 50, it's now going to bounce a little bit longer. I could choose to add something to the sine before I multiply it. So I could choose to add 50 here and then multiply by 100, which you'll see it's going off the screen because that is wild. So we are always going to keep our grouping symbols where it multiplies here and then we add at the end to change the size of that bounce. So this is our first method. It's going up, it's going a little farther down, but it is becoming a little bit responsive to what our needs are. This does not give you as much control as I think we could find in other places, which is why I think this method works as far as just using Sine and seeing it, but I think method 2 is going to be a little bit better for all of us. So I'm going to comment out method 2. I'm going to hit play. Now I have no circle. I'm going to very quickly add method 2, ellipse, 50, the sine, actually, let's keep it at 50, and 25. So right now, pause your code, add in a second ellipse. I want you to keep the first one there for reference. Go ahead and hit play. And here's our method 2. Method 2 involves using the map function, which we learned way back when in unit 2. Lots of 2s happening here. It's very confusing for me. And then we didn't really touch it since then. Some of you might have used it as a solution. Some of you might have learned it once and just kind of dropped it. For those of us who that applies, we just kind of dropped it and you're sitting there like, what is the map function? The map function takes a variable that changes. In our world, I believe we use mouse X and mouse Y to make that happen. And it reassigns the normal range of values to a range that we are making up. So how we can use this is we know that the sine right now, this variable, always oscillates between -1 and 1. If I would like to use that in a way that's more perceptible, where I can see it and where I can control where it starts and it stops, I can use map to reassign -1 to 1 to a new range of values. So right above this circle, I'm going to create a new variable, and I'm going to do the creation and everything directly in draw because I have absolutely no reason to use this variable anywhere else. So I'm going to write var, and I'm going to, because I know this is for my circle, and I know this is for the y value of my circle, I'm going to call it circ_y, and I'm going to say that circ_y is equal to the mapped version of the sine. So right now, map is taking in this changing variable, the sine, and I'm going to tell it first, what is the original range of the sine? And I know that the sine always goes from -1 to 1. I also know that I want the sine to bounce in a certain range. So maybe I only want my circle, well actually, let's start making it the way it was before. I want my circle to bounce between 0 and 100. That's my goal. I'm going to hit play. I'll notice nothing happened because I haven't used my variable yet. And instead of plugging the sine into my ellipse, now I'm going to plug in circ_y. I'm going to go ahead and hit play. And I'm going to see it bouncing up and down from 0 where it stops to 100 at the bottom. If I didn't want it to go all the way to the top, I could change this 0 to 50 and hit play. And now it's bouncing between 50 and 100. All that this map function is doing is telling the computer that whenever you see the sine at -1, if we are using circ_y, the variable, plug in a 50 instead. And anytime the sine becomes 1, plug in 100 instead. Then every value between -1 and 1 are being proportionally reassigned to all the values between 50 and 100. I would strongly encourage you to play with these numbers a little bit, mess around, make them something that's not 50 and 100. Maybe go like 25 to 200, maybe go 0 to 300. Just play a little bit, and once you are content with all the play you've done, come back here because we have just a few more things to talk about. Okay, so I am going to remap my values 10 to 100. And I am just very quickly going to show you one more thing that I think is cool that I want us to be aware of. So first is that this circ_y variable that I made, it can be used anywhere that there's a number. So for example, I could also plug circ_y in here and watch things get bigger and smaller as they move. I could also plug it in for a color. I could plug it in for really anything I want. I am also not tied to just this circ_y variable, which we'll talk about more in just a moment. For every single one of these challenges, I think I would like you to try and make that circ_y variable, or make a new variable, not always circ_y, set it equal to this map value where the only thing that is changing are these last two numbers. For the other thing I want to show you, right now we do have this bouncing circle. We did what I wanted to. But I can make this circle change in other ways too. And I think one of the coolest that I want to make sure you see before you leave is that I can add animation like we learned last week to this circle. So I'm going to have this circle's x position change, and I'm going to have x position start at 0. I'm going to say that x position should add 1 every time the draw function runs. And then inside my circle, I'm going to replace that 50 with x position. Now what we should see is our circle not only bounces up and down, but as it's bouncing up and down, we should see it move left to right. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play. And now I have a circle that moves in this kind of wavy pattern from left to right. And as a matter of fact, if you take the background off, you are going to see that this circle recreates that exact wave pattern that you guys saw on the slides in the first video, where it's really modeling what Sine does for you. Now, I don't particularly care about the background on and off for this. I think a lot of us are probably going to want it on so that we can see our animation. I just want to make sure we're aware that there's lots of ways we can use these signs to help us move and help us model kind of this mathematical idea. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my circle back to 50, so it's just bouncing in place. And I'm going to scroll through and just briefly show you the rest of these challenges. All of these challenges are asking you to create a new variable that will hold the sign of a changing angle. That's what you're doing on line 23. So for this new circle, you guys are going to create another variable. This one is asking you to move left to right. So I would think that this will probably be var circ x equals, and then map, you can still map the sign, it hasn't changed, and then you can use the rest of this to help you make things move from left to right. Now, what I don't want to see is I don't want to see you guys just copy and paste circ y into everything. I also don't want to see you using these same ranges every single time. Sine is not changing from being -1 to 1, but these values at the end are. So I don't want everything to go from 10 to 100. I want you to pick useful numbers that are going to change something about that shape. You will see that for a few of these, you are changing how things move. One example is moving left, right. One is moving diagonally. So you will need the X and the Y to change in order to do that. One of these involves changing size. You get to decide what you think a reasonable size is. One is just making text change. And the last one, you will make a variable that will change the color of a shape. So you know that colors in RGB go from 0 to 255. Please make sure you are choosing reasonable ranges within that as you utilize the map function. I'm going to leave you guys with this method 2, which you should be prioritizing on all of these tasks. You should only go back to method 1 if you really, really cannot figure out what you are doing with method 2. And again, that should only happen if you've already asked me questions and come to office hours. Good luck using Sine. I'm excited to see what you guys make.